Australia is in the midst of a housing crisis, and now it could be about to get worse.
The housing crisis forces young families and workers to leave in droves.
The housing crisis in Australia is this big, massive monster that continues to grow, and every measure that gets put in place to help just makes it worse. For those that have entered the market a while ago and have relatively low debt levels, they're laughing all the way to the bank. Their house prices keep going up. And the lower your debt levels means the more you can afford to buy more assets, which is pushing property prices even higher. But here's the thing, this is creating a massive divide between the haves and the have-nots. And those that entered into the market many years ago can't seem to understand or quantify what a massive problem we're facing as a nation. So in this video, I'm going to attempt to explain the housing crisis with one simple graph. In 2009, you could buy a house even if you were single. I'm talking about suburban Melbourne here, so it probably rings true for most locations in Australia. How do I know this? Because in 2009, that's when I actually purchased my property, and back then, I'm pretty sure my income was a little bit below average.
Our level of household debt is more than double our disposable income. And new data from the Reserve Bank shows the growth and the culprit, housing.
Fast forward to 2024, it's extremely hard. Even if you earn the average income, it would be really, really hard. Basically impossible because you can't borrow the money. This is a very specific example of a story that this graph explains. What's fascinating about this graph is that it shows us that our real incomes have not gone anywhere for 15 years. I'm going to talk about the income thing in a bit because this is really important to understand from a personal finance point of view. And what I've learned from people who understand this is that they're pretty much more financially successful than people that don't. First, let's focus on the property line. In 2009, you can see property increased greatly. This is primarily due to the GFC hitting and governments reducing interest rates. This is your standard playbook right here for central banks. Make the cost of money cheaper to soften the blow of recession. From there all the way to 2022, we have lower interest rates. Now, I know there's dips in the real property prices there, and that's because property prices are not just influenced by interest rates. We had the investors actually not being there post GFC. We had things like APRA putting the foot down on interest only lending, which you can see there in 2017. I really like this graph because it's very simple. It tells you the average person finds it harder to buy a property. I'm not going into why house prices are going higher because I've made lots of other videos about that. The first thing you think is that properties went up because interest rates went down, but you quickly come to present time and we've had higher interest rates for a while now. I think they started raising rates May 2022. So it just can't be the interest rates here because the last time I looked, no one was selling their properties. There is a simple solution to this, and that is that people with higher incomes and lower debt can afford to buy these properties. Ultimately, they understand this issue. They buy more property, the system ensures they'll win because property prices will go up. Unfortunately, this means your average home buyer will have to go into more debt to buy a home. I can understand why people do this, especially the middle class that aren't super wealthy and are just looking for financial security for them and their families. There is a darker side to this though. Inflation via lower interest rates have made the general public feel richer, but really all that's happened is the pie has been made bigger whilst the most wealthy are taking a larger slice. If you measure wealth by the ability of one to afford to buy assets, then this graph shows the average person is getting poorer, and it's not just by a little bit. Okay, this is the bit where I get a bit of heat thrown at me in the comments because I'm going to keep saying it because it's what I believe. And that is, no one's going to come and save you unless you have wealth in your family. If you're in the majority, you're going to have to figure something out. We all need a place to live in. We all need an income in retirement because a pension is poverty and super doesn't cut it for most people. I go on about taking responsibility for your financial future, and people come back at me and they're like, okay, genius, what should I do? There are no easy answers. The thing about this housing crisis is most people think it's a now problem. This has been a transfer of wealth from the lower and middle class, and it's gone on for decades. This graph is proof of it. The hardest answer you're going to hear is that you have to figure out a way, and that process will likely take years. I'm sorry that a lot of people have been conditioned in our now economy to think they can get what they expect. The whole overnight success thing is a lie when it comes down to finance. This is true for me because I grew up taking Centrelink payments, and I've got myself to a position where I'm in a better financial position than most people my age. The reason I mention this is because there's a lot of comments with people saying that they're giving up because it's just too hard. You're only beaten if you give up. It's worth remembering the answer of how do I make it financially has never been easy for the average person. People are going to punish me in the comments because they don't like what I have to say, but I have no reason to say this other than it's what I believe. Otherwise, I just tell people the solution is to go out and borrow more money because that's how my business makes money. Anyway, I've just created this online community aimed at being a safe space for people who are committed not to let the times beat them. My purpose is to help people answer the question of how do I make it financially. If you have any questions, leave them below or post them in the community. Cheers.